Hi guys, so welcome back to our tutorials. In today's tutorial, we're going to talk about how can we create such a card. You can see it's a very nice card and the card name is friend requests. And as you can see here on top, you can see the card. The card has some nice shapes. Here on top, on these edges, there are some nice shapes. And then here on the bottom, you can see another nice shape. So you're going to see how we can create these using HTML, CSS, and let's get started. So this is the live version of this HTML. I've just used an extension called Live Server. I showed you how you can use Live Server. Just go to the extensions tab, and then after installing, you'll see on the bottom, you'll see a text that says Go Live, and click on that, and let's continue. So the first thing I'm going to do is to link the CSS. So you can link the CSS by writing this style.css, which corresponds to the file name. All right. And then the styles, we have nothing, but we are going to add Poppins font. So let me just close this and show you. So you can go to fonts.google.com and then look for Poppins font. So just search Poppins font. And then on the bottom, you'll see get code. So on the bottom, you'll see get font. Just click that and then get embed code. And then we want Poppins. So remove all the other fonts that you might have in your history. And then let's go to the import. And then in the import, let's first edit this one. We don't want every font, you just want 400, 500, and 600. We also don't want italics. So that's it we want. And then if you come here, you'll see now a copy. You can copy this link. Make sure you go to the imports, not the link. Yes. So then paste that in. So you can see now we just loaded 400 weight, 500 and 600. You don't need the others. You don't need 100. That will just waste the bandwidth. And then after doing that, let's grab the body. So the body of the page. So you can say body and then font family. You can go back to the fonts and you'll see here the font family specified. You can copy these and then paste it here. That's the font family. The next thing I'm going to show you is that we have these shapes. So I'm using these shapes and I'm using the same shape. I have gotten them from this tool. It's called SVG shape generator. You can check that out. You can take note of this link and then you can generate shapes as you'd like. You can see now I'm generating shapes. You can see here, you click here on the bottom to generate shapes that we are going to use. So go ahead and generate a shape you might want to use, or if you want to use the exact shape I have, go to my GitHub repository, TikTok project. So GitHub, my username is TechWithTwin. Just take note of this URL. So it's github.com/techwithtwin/TikTok-projects, all lowercase. And then look for the project called friend requests. Click on it and then images, and then you'll find that SVG. It's called shape.svg. So let's continue. Let's close all the others. And then the next thing I want to do now is to add some default styles for CSS. This one, make sure that the CSS is working as we expect. So margin 0, padding 0, and box sizing border box. And then let's go back to the HTML and start creating this card. So I'm going to create a div that has a class of card. Inside that card is where I'm going to add all these details. And the first thing you might realize is that we have like a header. You can see we have the friend request, and then you have another text here says view all. So I'm going to create a div that has these two elements. It has this heading and this text. So I'm going to create a div that is called header or heading. Let's use header. And then you create a heading level 2 and say friend requests. All right. And then we also have a paragraph that says view all. So this one you could add it as a link, but since you're just working with markup, we can just use a paragraph. So that's the heading. The next thing we need is now this card. You can see this card is repeated like 4 times, 1, 2, 3, 4. So our job is just to create one, and we also need to wrap these cards inside one container. So we can give that container a name like a content, and then inside is where we create the request. So the friend request, which is now this section, one of it. So the content will have several sections of a request. So these are requests. Inside the request, we have the left section and the right section. So we have two elements, this section and this section. And then inside the first element, we have two other elements. And let's first create the left section. So I'm going to create a div with a class of left. Inside the left, we have two more elements. This is the left. We have two more elements, the image and this content. So let's create the image. And then let's grab the. So I have not added my shape. So I'm going to can create a folder and call it images. And then let's add that shape. I'm just going to copy it. So I'm going to do that. And then you can see the shape that I have selected. And then let's close this. Then now that's our image. So we do /images shape.svg. And then that's the image. So we have the image and the content. But this content, I'm not going to give it a class because I know how I can get to it by using the left and then going to the div. So I'm just going to create a div, and then inside the div, we have a heading level 4 that says, let's start with the first character, equal wise. So these are characters I took from a movie called The Raid. It's a very nice action movie, so you can check it out. The Raid, I think The Raid Part 2. The Raid Part 2. The Raid 2, I think. Huh? Yeah, this movie. It's a very nice movie. So these are the characters that were in that movie. So the next thing is that you have a paragraph that says two mutual friends. So what I've done is that let's recap. We have the request. The request is this whole item. So request 1, request 2, request 3, request 4. It's like a friend request. Inside the request, we have two elements, this left element and the right element, which happens to be the button. And then inside the first left element, we have two more elements, the image and the content. Inside the content, we have two more elements, the heading and the text. The left has image, the content. Inside the content, we have the heading again and the paragraph. So that's it for the left side. Then the right hand side, we just have the button. So you don't even need to create a div. So you can create a button and say confirm. And that's all we need to do about that. So, okay, I made a mistake here in the images. So the images we want to use here is not our shape. The image we want to use is some placeholder images. So you can look for real avatars that you can use, but I'm going to use placeholders. One of the placeholders that I'm going to use is this that is called pravatar.cc, which gives you a random. Let me open this. So it gives you a random. It gives you a random avatar of a person. So that's what we are going to use. And then when you change image 1 to 2, 3, 4, it will give you different images. All right. And then I'm going to copy these down. So let's go. Oh, the finished version is visible now. So I'm going to copy these down. The request 4 times. So I'm going to do. So, all right. Let's copy these down 4 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4. We save that. We're going to see we all have these images. And then what I'm going to do is that something I forgot is that these images are too large. So let's resize these images even before we go to CSS. So we can say a width of 40. So we can do that for all the other images. So we can do. So like that. No, not there, there, there. and then paste. And then now all the images are as we expect. The next thing is that you can find that this content is to the edges. So let's go to the CSS and give this a display of flex, justify content, center. And then let's give the card some width. So we can say card and then give it a width of, let's do a width of maybe 300 pixels. We can do 300 pixels. And then that looks a bit big, nice. The next thing is that this one, they can see the friend request is too close to the edges. So let's go to the body and give some padding here of like 2 rem. All right, now it is isolated. And then the next thing we are going to do is in the card, what we are going to do in the card is that we need to give some box shadows to the card. So box shadow. Now in the box shadows, you don't need to memorize about box shadows. You can say box shadow generator, just like that. And then you see so many box shadow generators tools, and then you can use them to play around with this and come up with a very nice box shadow. You can see you can come up with very nice box shadows like that. Yeah, you can use either. So I'm going to copy paste the box shadow I came up with. So it's 0 pixels horizontal. This one is vertical, 23 pixels, and then 50 pixels. I think it's the blur, and then 8 pixels for the spread. And then RGBA 248, 117, 55, and an opacity of 0.34. You can see now that looks a bit nice. The next thing that we are going to fix is that now, even if we have added the box shadow, you can see the content is too close to the edges. Let's go to the card and give a padding of 1 rem. All right, it looks a bit nice. The next thing, let's style this request. So this request doesn't look as we expect. So let's go back to the finished version. You can see now the request. We said the request is just one request, this one. It has 2 elements, so you can count the elements. So we can say the request has the left and so the request has 2 elements, the left and the button. So we need to display this flex. So we can go ahead and say dot request. So let's grab it by the class name. So request, and then we can say display flex direction of column. No, we want to give some align items to the center. So let's go here. Now, as we do that, you can see now it still does what we expect, but then we need to justify content space between. So by doing space between, they take up the full space that is available. That's why you can see it looking a bit nice. So let's style the left hand side. The left hand side still needs to be displayed. Flex. So we can say dot left and then displayed flex as well. Let's go to the finished version. You can see now our card starts to take shape. That's very fantastic. So the left hand side, we displayed flex, and then we align the items to the center. You can see it now. Let's give some gap. You can see this image is too close to the content. So we can say gap of 0.3 rem. And then you can see a space has been formed. The next thing is that this image needs to be rounded like the finished version. So we can go now to dot left. Then we grab the image. So how did we get to that? So we have the dot left class, and then we go to the image. So we can say now in the image border radius, maybe 50%. I think 50%. All right, you can see it. It looks a bit nice now. The next thing is that this is too huge. So we are going to grab how can we grab it? So we have the dot left, and then we want to grab these headings. So it is the dot left div heading. We can do that. So we can say dot left div heading, and then let's give it a font size. Let's give it a font size of 0.8 rem. Now it looks a bit nice. It's not very huge. Let's work on this text. The text is still in the same div, so we can say left div and then paragraph. Then let's give it a font size of 0.6 rem. All right. Now you can see the card starts to take shape. So that's very fantastic. Let's reduce it. Let's make it semi-bold. So you can say font weight. Let's do a font weight of 500. I think that looks nice. And then because of it looks similar to the heading, so we can give it a grayish color. So we can say color. Then we can do hash 3D. And then save. And then now you can see now it looks a bit nice. The next thing you might realize is that these requests are too close to each other. So how do we do that? We have them all wrapped inside the content. So we can go to the content. We haven't selected the content. So we can say dot content display flex. And then flex direction column. And then let's do some gap like 1 rem. Right. And then the card looks a bit nice. The next thing is that these are supposed to be side by side. So the request and the view. So we grab the header. So we can say dot header. And then after grabbing the header, we can display it flex. So we can say display flex. You can see it. And then you can see now this is at this edge. This one is at the other end. So we can align them in the center. Right. It looks a bit nice. And then we justify content space between. Yeah, like that. So the next thing, let's style the headings H2. So this one was a H2. So if you look at this edge here, we have the heading as H2. Let's grab the H2. So we can say dot header H2. And then let's reduce its font size. It's a bit big. So we can say 1.2 rem. Then the font weight, let's do it at 600. Now you can see the card starts to take shape. So finally, let's grab this text. So to grab this text, we are going to say dot header and then paragraph and then font size 0.7 rem. All right. So we are almost there. I think we did in the content, we did very large. So let's remove one of the cards. So let's go to one of the requests and grab one of it and remove it. All right, that looks a bit nice. The next thing might realize inside the card, we have two elements, the header and the content. We need to have some gaps here. So we can go to the card and display it flex direction of column, and then a gap. Let's do a gap of maybe 1 rem. I think 1 rem is okay. All right, it looks a bit nice. The next thing, let's add these shapes. So these shapes are displayed absolute to the card. So the card needs to be displayed to be position relative. So the element that has the position relative, the children that have absolute are placed absolute to the parent that has the relative. If you don't have the parent that has relative, it is displayed relative to the root element, the element that wraps this HTML document. So we have that, and then we need to go ahead and create these two shapes. So I think this is the card. We don't want it to be inside the card, so we can create a div here. And then let's give this div a class of box. And then this one specifically will be box right. Now let's do top right. I want to distinguish them. This one is the top right. And then let's do the same for the bottom left. So this one is bottom left. All right. And then let's create Let's create now the shape. I'm going to use an image. You can paste the SVG directory, but I don't want that. So we are using the same shape. So let's add that shape. So we can do images, shape. And we are going to still use the same shape here inside. So we can do image, and then let's do the images and then shape. All right. And then if we come back here, you can see now the shapes has been added in the DOM, but that's not what we want. So we are going to display them absolute. We have the same class because they'll take the same. So I'm going to write a comment here and say shapes. All right. And then here I can say box, position, absolute. Then you need to grab it by its class name. So it's dot box. And then they are lost because we have not specified where they should be. And yeah, we haven't specified that. So let's start with the box top right. So you can say box. It has to have a class of dot box, the box, and then top right. So whenever you chain CSS classes, that is a mandatory class. So it has to have the box and it has to have the box top right. We could use the dot top right alone, but it's good to chain them because if you have another one that you have called the dot top right, then that will be an issue. And then we are going to say this one is a top of 0. So think of here as the top. This one is the bottom. This one is the left. This one is the right, this edge. So top 0, we'll place it here on top. And then let's do right 0 here. So it's like a Cartesian grid. So it will be somewhere here. So we are going to say right 0. And then something else we need to add is that let's give it a z index. Okay, do we need a z index here? The z index is used for stacking elements. So if you have two elements that this element is a stack, is this element going to be on front or behind another element? So let's do that. So I don't think we need the z index. All right, so let's also do let's do top 50% and see. So the shape is not visible. So and then the right of maybe 50%. So top dash right. So let's see top dash right. So we didn't give it a width. So let's go to the image and give it a width of 200. All right, that's nice. So width 200. Those are our shapes. So we need to place them where they belong. This one we said is a top of 0. And then a right of 0. This one is the top right. This one is the top right one. But what happens is that when you say top 0, it starts here and draws that circle here. So we need to push this element behind, not even behind. We want to push it here. So we need, this is the center of this element. So we need to push it something like 50% to this x-axis and then 50% away on top away so that now it can be pulled to this corner. So how can we do that? We use the transform. And the transform, I did a tutorial on the transform. And then I'll just show you briefly. So the transform, we translate. When you use the translate, you could either translate X, Y, or both. So let's start X. So right now, it doesn't have any transform. Let's try the transform. If we do transform X 100%, it is pushed away in the X axis. So this is like a Cartesian grid. If you say 100%, it is pushed 100% of its width positive. So you push it positively, right? So if I do 50%, you can see, let's start at 0. So we do 0. This is where it is. When we do push it 50% in the x-axis, and then we are doing a positive 50%. Positive goes this way. And then positive y-axis goes this way. y-axis goes this way, positive x-axis goes this way. If you try to do negative, it goes the other way. Let me show you. So if you do negative 50%, you see where it goes, because negative goes this way, positive goes the other way, all right, toward the right hand side. So what we want is, we want to push it 50% of its, so you can see it was initially here, and then we pushed 50% of its width to the x-axis, and then we want to push it up. Now we said up is negative, bottom is positive in the y-axis. So we can do, instead of using the x-axis alone, we can do x and y. So y, we can push it negative 50% of its height now. And then you can see that it places itself here. And then we can go back to the card and say, now let's first place the other one. So we can say dot box dot bottom left. So this one will be now bottom of 0. We want it here. We want it somewhere here. So we need bottom is 0. So we can say bottom 0. And then the left now becomes 0 because we are here. This is left 0. This is right 0. So we can say left 0. Then the same issue happens because we start here and then we draw. We start from where it matches, because this is left 0, right 0. Where they meet is where it starts to get drawn, because this is the size of that shape. So when we start drawing, we draw this shape here, but we need to push it back. This side, the left axis, we push it negative, and then we push it down in the y-axis. So how are we going to do? We do transform and then translate. We said x-axis, we want it to go back, because if you wanted to go back 50%, now x will be here, and then 50% bottom, this one will be 50% will be somewhere here, and then now this was 0, we push 50%, then they come and match somewhere here, and then they get that shape where we want it to be. So negative 50% on the x-axis, then 50% on the y-axis. You can see now where it places itself. And then let's go to the card and do something and say we want everything that overflows to be hidden. So we can say, let's do, I want to hide these elements. So we can do overflow. So it's overflow hidden. We get the shapes. These are the shape we wanted. But in the finished version, you can see we tried to push the bottom one away. So we just play around and come up with a very nice one. So how I do that is that now we don't push 50% on the x-axis, we push here 40%. You can see now we did not push too much. And then now we push it more down in the y-axis. So we just do 60. I think 60 is okay. You can also even do 70. And then the x-axis, we don't want to push too much. Let's push maybe that. You can see it now. And then in this one, let's give it a Zen index, because you can see now this one is on top of the content. You need to push it down. So we can do a Zen index and specify that this one should be in the bottom lowest. And then something else we might want to add here is an opacity. Let's add an opacity of 50%. Then you can see the shape now becomes opacited. And then we are not going to change the opacity of this one. So what we are going to do is that let's go to the paragraph in the header and give it a color of white. So still doesn't show. And then let's go to this and do a Zen index of -1. We can also do 0, because by default they have 1. So this one is still not visible. Let's use a -1 maybe. Now we get to where we wanted, but now finally, I think even we created a better version of it. So finally, let's style this button. So it was in the request, so we can go to where we're styling the request. So we can do dot request and then the button, because the button was a child of the dot request. So if you remember, the button was a child of the request. So let's go to the content. So you can see now we have dot request, and then the button was the child. So we can do now, we start styling this. We can do a background color of white on the button. And then A color should be black. I think it's already black. I think that's unnecessary. Don't need that. And then a padding. Let's do 4 pixels vertical and then 10 pixels horizontal. Right. So it doesn't show. Dot request, and then we grab the button. Let's add a border radius and see whether it is working. So we can say border radius of 2 pixels. Let's do 50 pixels. So the reason it was not working, we did not use pixels, we used X. Then it looks a bit nice. And then let's reduce the font size to 0.6 rem. It looks a bit nice. And then the border now should be 1 pixels. So you can say border 1 pixels solid. And then RGBA 000. This one is a dark color with an opacity. So we do 0.6. So we did more. I think we need 3 of them. Right, you can see now it looks a bit nice. And then finally, I think that's okay. I think that's okay. So that's it, guys. That's how you can create such a beautiful card. And thank you for watching. Make sure you like if you have reached to this, and make sure you like. You can also follow and share with your friends. This one helps the algorithm the most. Thank you.